Thank you for joining us today. My name is Erich Kurschat. I'm the owner of Harmony Insights, LLC, which is an organization that allows me to help companies and consultants use the DISC personality assessment, which a lot are using virtually these days with their teams. I'm also the founder of HR Hot Seat, which is an inclusive mastermind, HR mastermind community of over 2,500 members in 10 different licensed chapters around the country. And you can find out more about that at hrhotseat.com. You have joined today a series that I'm calling Harmony Insights Lunch Dates. And it's kind of selfishly motivated, honestly. I am bringing folks on for 30 minutes of conversation on Zoom on my lunch hour that inspire me. With everything that's going on in the world right now, I feel like I could use that positivity and that perspective from folks that I admire. And that at the top of that list today is Benjamin Warsinske from BrandedWorld. And he and I have met only recently, I'd say relatively recently in the last several months, and have gotten to know one another. And I am thrilled to have him join us for today's Harmony Insights lunch date to talk about why play matters and build on that theme a little bit. So welcome, Ben.
Thanks so much for having me.
No problem at all. So I wouldn't do your introduction service. So I would love for you to just briefly let people know, give them some context for our conversation today, where you come from and what you do.
Sure. So right off the bat, I strongly believe that play is the missing ingredient in today's workplace. With all of the stress and things that we're facing, a lot of times we don't know how to express our creativity and how to bring that out. And so I think play is the piece that really kind of brings that out of people. And the question is, well, how do you get into play, which we'll discuss further. But so just kind of a little backstory on myself. Play and Lego has always been a big theme in my life growing up, and that led to me studying urban planning and landscape architecture and design, which led to a career designing resort residential communities in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Egypt, and kind of just really exemplifying all of the creativity and play from building these immersive environments in Lego. I got to do that for people, for humans, which was a lot of fun. And then I made a career transition and moved from LA to Hawaii and became a strategic planner. And I was embedded with the US Air Force Pacific headquarters, and we worked on strategic forward mission plans all throughout the Pacific theater. And so it was that experience combined with my design experience and my kind of play background that I started to see this need for improving the brand experience, both for the employees and for the customers. And so when you have the employee experience and you have the customer experience, those kind of combine to create the overall brand experience. And what I was noticing was a lot of reactivity as a consultant with our clients. And I was trying to figure out, well, how can we get ahead of that and how can we be more proactive? And play kind of became an integral part in my creative agency that I now run, which is called BrandedWorld. And I help clients develop and design and shape their brands. And we do that through play to deliver exceptional experiences.
I have to say right off the bat, your resume is much cooler than mine is. I'm happy with a lot of the things that I've done. And then I hear where you've been and what you've done, and I am just blown away. So I'm grateful that we've met, to say the least. So much to get into today. We have a half an hour for our conversation. I'm so glad that people have decided to join us for it. A couple things I want to say right off the bat. Number one, everybody has been muted, but there's the cool chat feature here on Zoom. So if you have questions, we've already heard from Karen saying that Karen has been to Dubai. If you have questions you'd like to ask along the way, put those in the chat area and we'll see if we can get to those. Before we go to any further, and I'd love to give this a try, I've created just a quick poll and I'd love to see if this is going to work today. The question I'm asking on this poll says, when is the last time that you engaged in any form of play that didn't involve children? And then you have a few opportunities to answer there. Very recently, I incorporate play regularly into my adult life, or I try to strike a good balance, but I could be much more intentional about it, or even seriously, who's got time for that? Hopefully you see this. If you don't, let me know. I can have had some trouble with this recently. If you haven't seen it, put in the chat box that you're not able to see this, because that'll help me try to figure out what's going on with this. But I'll leave this up for a little bit. Hopefully you're able to respond to that poll. Ben, in the meantime, I promised people meaningful and actionable conversation. And I think that we crave that now on various levels. I want to start out with the meaningful piece. And we're all impacted in some way by coronavirus. Odds are we're all tuning in from home, which in itself could be a change for folks. How have you personally been impacted by COVID-19 so far, if you'd be willing to share?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's honestly, it's been a just like roller coaster of emotions. A lot of my work involves facilitation and workshops and interacting with people and Lego. And so with all of that kind of coming to a grinding halt, it's been kind of nerve-wracking to kind of figure out, how to pivot and where to go, which is where everyone is kind of in this mode right now. And so I think it's just really kind of an interesting time.
Yeah. I'm hearing that from a lot of people too, especially those folks who are saying that, well, the bulk of what I do is bring people together face to face. And now I'm not able to do that. But also what a great opportunity then to look at what you do in a different light and say, how can I still accomplish what my compass is set up to help me accomplish, but do so through a different medium. And so I think that's people like you and I are attempting to do that these days, certainly through the HR Hot Seat Mastermind community. All right, well, let's get into this a little bit. You've already set the stage about how you are dealing with play. And I'm interested, tell us a little bit more about that, whether it's background on how you've come to facilitate what you facilitate, or at the very least, what are some challenges that our attendees may be facing around the idea of incorporating play into their life that maybe they're not even aware that are current challenges?
Yeah, so when you think about play, so everyone has kind of a different idea, and so I kind of go back to play being creativity. And so when you think about what brings you joy, or how you can be creative in your work, whatever that may be, there's like, so it can translate back to artwork or drawing or music. It could be like creativity in so far as how you solve problems. And so all of that kind of, I think, resembles play in whatever fashion and whatever industry you're in. A great example is if you watch Treehouse Masters. So we've been watching that on Animal Planet, and Pete Nelson is just a great example of how he just exemplifies his passion for building these custom tree houses all over the world, and that brings him joy, and that is his form of play. And so the more I kind of tap into what play means and why it matters and how we can incorporate it into our lives and in our work, I'm just seeing all these different examples of that kind of coming that I didn't see before.
I think it's interesting now to hear you say that out loud. I think we're more comfortable and familiar with the word creativity and innovation. Those are sort of professional words, right? Air quotes, professional words. But as soon as you swap them out for the word play, I think you very naturally people push back a little bit and say, I don't have time for that. That's not something that I do in my professional world. I'm creative, I'm innovative. I don't really have time to play. That's for my children or for kids that I know. Do you ever get that response from people?
Yes, I do. And so I've been kind of furiously researching and finding, lots of like psychoanalysts and psychologists and just these amazing people. And I want to share this quote because it ties in really well with play. And so she's a American professor of psychiatry, Kay Redfield Jameson, and she says, children, and I put in, and adults need the freedom and time to play. Play is not a luxury, play is a necessity. And so when we think about our work and we think about being creative and innovative, what does that really mean? It means that we need time and we need to get into the right state of mind in order to have this limitless kind of ideas and this abundance of possibilities. And we need to be able to not kind of shoot down the ideas right away. We need to actually let them kind of unfold and iterate and try multiple different ways to kind of come up with a solution or a variety of solutions. And that's what really play is to me. It's kind of the state of mind that we can get into in the state of flow, that we can then have these new ideas and new perspectives come out that we otherwise would have missed.
It reminds me of the experience that I have with improvisational comedy. And my brother is very heavy in that world. I took an introductory class because it was the one thing that scared me more than anything else. And I was like, well, that means I have to do it. And just the underlying tenets saying that, no idea is a bad idea, and be accepting of whatever people put out into the world and build on it in some way. I think that that's certainly an iteration of play. We mentioned earlier, we're talking about kids. My sense is that thinking of how kids play is a good basis for getting a sense of how we could play. Do you agree with that? Do you see that the play that children are doing as a good example of what we should be aspiring toward?
Yes, and I just saw another quote where I can't remember their name, but they said that adults sidestep into this other reality to play, and then they kind of come out of that other reality back to their normal life. Whereas children, they are playing and they are advancing and growing through their play. And so I think there's this idea about, as adults, we kind of like, if you're to take like a workshop that used like a Lego serious play workshop, adults sometimes will sidestep into this realm of play as I guide them through this experience. And then once it's done, they're kind of like, okay, that was amazing. Like, what just happened? Like, and then they kind of go back to their normal lives. Whereas children kind of take that and then they advance and they kind of focus on mastery. And so I think the idea is that how can adults kind of move into this like realm of mastery and this creative outlet, whatever that creative outlet is, how can they do that more so that they can build that creativity muscle and find that they can play within their lives and within their work a lot more freely than I think people allow themselves to do.
And it strikes me that that adults can have very similar goals and objectives, or be playing for similar reasons. My wife is a first grade teacher, and she talks about how play for her children allows them to socialize in ways that they might not otherwise, connect with their friends, but then also it reinforces learning. It sort of resets them in a sense and positions them well to return maybe from recess to the classroom to learn something in a way that they might not be well positioned to learn otherwise. Do you find that adults can and should be playing for similar reasons?
Yes, and it's funny you bring that up because for the past 4 or 5 months, I had led a series called Bricks and Brands Conversations Through Play, which was a kind of an enhanced networking experience. And it was a way for me to kind of get people to experience Lego Serious Play, but through a way of connecting with others and kind of building their network and really having these authentic conversations. And so what I noticed is that the way I designed the experience was that we wouldn't share our work or the company that we worked for until maybe 30 minutes into the experience, so that we focused on the person and the individual and brought out their kind of characteristics and their traits and their personality. And then once people kind of knew each other and they were doing this through these different builds, then they maybe like their job title would come in and would come into play, and it would make more sense and it would have context and people could then really connect to that. And so I think that the feedback from that has been amazing, and that's one of the things I'm really kind of bummed about, that I can't continue those in the way that I was doing them. And so it's just, but the feedback has been, this is like one of the best networking events I've attended. I've met people that were complete strangers, and 10 minutes in, I felt like I knew them my entire life. And this is all just coming from simple activities of, build a tower with a couple of bricks for 3 minutes, and then tell the story of that tower, and what your minifigure is doing or isn't doing. And the just simple activities like that, and just the creativity and the stories and the metaphors that came out of those builds, just blows me away every single time.
I'd like to come back to this. Let's keep talking about your Bricks and Brand series, because it seems like every time I log into LinkedIn, I see somebody posting about whether it's a photo that they took or just some testimonial about their experience at your workshop. I want people to learn more about that. In the meantime, we have had a couple of people participate in the chat area. Karen was saying, given the work from home, she and her husband have been playing cards and games every night. Chris has talked about some of the stuff that he's done. I guess there are even games you can play through Zoom, which is cool. I didn't realize that.
Awesome.
I'm sure people can get creative with that. I know that I have done, I'm a Words with Friends addict, so I've been playing quite a bit of that, and something else called Game Pigeon on my phone um, that I've discovered in the meantime. But it ends up being a good break for me, as long as it's not too much
Hmm.
of a distraction, a good break, so I can step away from maybe something where I feel like I've hit a wall, and come over here, do something
Hmm.
creative, and then come back, as my wife was saying that her students are doing, with this new mindset, better able to tackle some of the stuff that I'm working on. And even as a facilitator, and I'm interested if you or if anybody else joining us have experienced this, as a facilitator, in the beginning, I thought, okay, everybody needs to be focused on me and what I'm talking about in the workshop. And then if they weren't, I thought they were distracted. And then over time, I came to learn that there are some people who preferred to have something to tinker with in front of them. Maybe it's Legos, or maybe it's a ball, or maybe it's something that they could squeeze because they needed to redirect a certain energy that they had. And if they didn't have that, they wouldn't be able to focus on what I was doing. So even though I perceived them as distracted, they're saying, no, to be able to play in this way allows me to connect better with what's going on, with what you're saying, than I would be able to otherwise. And I thought, well, that's
Hmm.
just, that opened my eyes to how different some learning styles can be.
Yeah, and I use Lego Serious Play with my work in developing brands. And so when we talk about the culture piece of like developing core values or the vision or the mission, before using Lego, it was very conceptual and very high level, and I was only getting kind of surface level answers from my clients. And as soon as I brought out Lego and had them build an aspect of one of their core values and then tell the story of that value to them, that's when the real kind of magic came about. And so we were able to take all these different insights that came out from the build and all the information that's contained in the Lego model, and then start to inject that into the core values and the meanings behind the core values and into the vision and into the brand promise. And that really just kind of gave the employees, the team members, ownership within the brand that they're building and the organization that they represent. But it also gave a lot more depth as to what this organization stands for and how they're going to move forward. And I just find that incredibly fascinating. The more I do it, it's just the results are just amazing.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about that subjectivity piece. And I think I perceive play as often being very subjective. And when you and I first talked about the Bricks and Brands workshop, I was thinking, well, people have a limited number of Legos, and, you tell them to build a duck, for example, and maybe what they build doesn't necessarily look like a duck. It's got to be subjective to a certain extent. And you had a really interesting response around how important that subjectivity is and how it's facilitating communication and helping people come to terms with these ideas that they are having a hard time maybe putting into words. Can you talk more about how important that subjectivity of play really is?
Yeah, it really kind of comes back to communication and understanding all these different perspectives. And so when you have a group of even like 10 to 15 people, and you ask each one to build a duck with 6 bricks, chances are all of those ducks are going to look completely different. And what that kind of translates to is everyone has a different perspective. Everyone brings a different perspective. And what I love about the Lego Serious Play methodology is that it kind of levels the playing field, and everyone has a voice. Everyone gets to share, and there's no right or wrong. We're just trying to communicate our ideas and have everyone be heard, and then kind of move forward from there. And it's really kind of a refreshing take versus a kind of a traditional meeting where maybe you have like a whiteboard and you're trying to capture notes, and only like 2 or 3 people are talking, and people who want to share feel that they are not going to be heard because they're going to be overpowered by the people that that kind of dominate the conversation. And so this kind of gives a way for everyone to share and give their ideas and have that chance to be heard.
I don't know if you've used these words exactly yet, but I'm thinking of diversity and inclusion. And those are two important components of what I'm doing, certainly with the HR hot seat community. But I don't use those words often myself.
Mhm.
And I'm picturing what you do in your workshop, and I've yet to attend one, and I promise I'm going to get there as soon as we're allowed to again.
Yep.
But as you start talking about not just individuals playing, but teams playing, and that the diversity of thought and approach, um, and being inclusive of these different approaches, you know, having everybody feel that their voice is worth hearing, that their version, I love this metaphor, this simile, whatever you want to call it, this version of their duck is important and valuable
Mhm.
in some ways, as is the story around this version of their duck. Um, that the company or the team wouldn't be as strong if their version of the duck didn't exist,
Yep.
uh, or their ability to articulate why their version of their duck exists to begin with, you know. And I don't want to get too philosophical with this, but do you often use the words diversity and inclusion in the Lego serious play and the work that you do with Bricks and Brands?
You know, I haven't, but I've been seeing diversity and inclusion pop up as a kind of a trending kind of theme, and it it does it is kind of all about diversity and inclusion, but I haven't used those words specifically yet. Maybe I should. There's a good synergy between them.
Yeah, wonderful. Um, we have a few minutes left, about 7 minutes, and I do want to be respectful of everybody's time, yours and our attendees included. If again, just a reminder that if people would like to ask additional questions, you can put them in the chat area, and we'll see if we can work those in. People are going to be coming at this conversation from different perspectives, you know, wondering about how they can incorporate play into their work as individuals, how they can use it to enhance teamwork and team bonding and all of those sorts of things. Can we shift our conversation into some actionable takeaways that you can share to allow people, again, as individuals, to incorporate play into their work so that it's more meaningful and fulfilling to them? And then maybe also, given how we are working remotely now, how people can use play perhaps, you know, via Zoom or other virtual platforms to enhance teamwork at this time.
Yeah. So you know, when we think about play, I think like you had mentioned, you know, taking a break from the work that you're doing to kind of reset your mind and kind of step away from that if you're facing like a roadblock or a mental block. And so I encourage people to think about what it is that they love to do. Like for me, it's building with Lego. So um, in my office, like I've got like just Lego sets like galore, like all around my office. And so I like to take a time, like, you know, take a few minutes and just build build something. Or even I take one of my Lego Serious Play kits and I just build, and that just kind of like either allows me to think through different things or to take a break. And so I would encourage people to find what it is that kind of brings them joy as a creative outlet. And then I would set aside time either each day or each week to kind of play and to actually do that activity. And then, you know, after a week of that, maybe it's a couple times a week, kind of, I would then say, you know, write down or just reflect on how you feel after you do that creative outlet. I know, like for me, when I'm building with Lego, it energizes me. And so once I've created this model, then I'm like, oh wow, that was incredible. And then I have all this extra energy, and I can then apply it back to my work, to create email newsletter campaigns or to develop you know, creative content for my clients, in whatever thing that I'm going back to. But I think that that's kind of important to kind of self-reflect and make sure that it's actually energizing you to then go back to what you're doing and what you're working on. And so from a team perspective, I think it's just important to have everyone on the team understand what their creative outlet is, and then to make sure and kind of check in and say, you know, hey, did you get a chance to you know, to draw for a couple minutes, or to whatever it is, to kind of just you know, kind of reset their mind and make sure that they're also taking like a mental health break, from their work and from the stress and from the anxiety that we're all kind of encompassed in, and just yeah, and so it just kind of helps to step away from that.
Holding people accountable to play as well. I know I'm doing it. Are you doing it as well, and checking in? Do you have, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to, do you have any recommendations on team play that can be done virtually? Say, 3 or 4 people, for example, on a given work team are getting together for a Zoom call, and they're going to talk all afternoon about work and strategy, but they want to start out with something that's going to last only 5 or 10 minutes, that resembles play or creativity in some sense. Do you have any recommendations, assuming they don't have a Lego set sitting around that they can grab?
That was my first thought. I was like, well, I would make
Of
sure everyone
course.
had some Lego, and build, make a challenge, and build something, and see what everyone comes up with in those 3 or 5 minutes, and just kind of take time to tell that story. I just think there's something about building with your hands that
Yeah.
just, it really, like, it works both sides of your brain. And so I guess if it's not Lego, I would encourage maybe like an improv game where you could go around to everybody, and maybe it's you're telling a story, and each person gets 30 seconds to share a piece of that story, and by the time you're done, you have this long, fun, random story that kind of comes together from everyone. But something
Yeah.
like that, just to kind of shake everything loose, and get everyone kind of in this mindset.
You're frozen on my end. Are you, is anybody else seeing that as well? I think we may have lost you. Okay, you're back. Excellent. Are
Oh,
you, uh, I was going to say, and if we can assume that play involves creativity and imagination, I've heard that people are just doing a simple show and tell, where they're just,
mhm.
grabbing something nearby and telling the story behind that, and reminiscing about some fun thing that happened that allowed them to acquire whatever this thing is, just to inspire that
Yeah.
imagination, perhaps, right?
Yep, for sure, for sure. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. It also kind of brings out people's personalities without them knowing it, which is another kind of fun benefit of play.
Yeah. And then maybe, if you would agree with this, we kind of started out talking about children, maybe end saying that if you have children that are living at home, or that are nearby, or that are outside your window, watch what they're doing, right? Be observant about how they are playing themselves, and why they're playing, and what they seem to be getting out of it, because odds are we could benefit in a similar way. All right, excellent. We are just about at 12:30. Ben, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad that you were able to join me, and that others were tuned in for this as well. I hope to make this recording available at some point, for those of you who would like to watch it again, or share it with your respective networks. Ben, if people wanted to learn more about what you do, the Bricks and Brands workshop, etc., where can they find you online and elsewhere?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Benjamin Warsinske. I'll drop the links in the chat, and then also on my website, brandedworld.co.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. If you want to learn more about DISC, harmonyinsights.com. The HR mastermind that I run is at hrhotseat.com. And if you've enjoyed this, I would love it if you would share with your network, harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. I've already planned a few more for next week around what it's like to be in transition, not necessarily professionally, but just how you find clarity in transition in your life. Someone is going to share the tenets of improvisational comedy, and how it can help you design virtual meetings that are less terrible, as he says, along with a woman who's going to come on and talk about mindfulness and wellness in a time of stress. So I'm really looking forward to those and other conversations. Again, those are at harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. Thank you all for being a part of this. And I hope to see you for a future lunch date. Thanks again, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.